All right, in my video last night, I was talking about how the Detroit Lions have so much going on that I could be making 3, 4, 5 videos in a day, but I don't have time because it's not my full-time job. Then I got done making the video, and I'm like, I can make another video. Let's do it. Let's do it. This is such, I know it's coming off the loss, but it's such an exciting time. There's so much news going on. And I am so convinced that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are the men who are stirring the pot here. I'm so convinced that there are so many coaches that are having so much success because of Dan Campbell. There are so many players having success because of Brad Holmes, because of Dan Campbell. And you read stuff that I was talking about, like Schefter's, everybody is trying to mimic. Everybody's trying to copy the blueprint that the Detroit Lions have set forth. The problem is there's only one Dan Campbell. So I want to talk a minute about Ben Johnson. And I want to talk about how, no, the Lions aren't going to let him get away with it. And at first, when he went to Chicago, I'm like, no, that's my worst nightmare. But then I started realizing, and when you hear him in his interview and you do all that kind of stuff, what you realize, and I'm just going to say it, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. He's Dan Campbell light. And that is who Chicago's getting. They're getting a guy who isn't naturally quite like Dan Campbell, but is trying to be like Dan Campbell. And maybe you guys have seen this stuff. I really don't know if you've seen this. But there is this stuff that's going on that we're seeing where you see Ben Johnson saying the exact same things that Dan Campbell is saying not that long ago in interviews. And part of it is the culture that's been ingrained in him. But who do you think it comes from to start with? It's Dan Campbell. I'm going to play some audio and I'm going to let you see exactly what I'm talking about. I'll let you hear for yourself. First one's Dan Campbell. Second one's going to be Ben Johnson. Here you go.
It was one of the things that for somebody like me was appealing about playing here, wanting to play here, and coach here. This is a sleeping giant for football. And they, Pistons have had success, Red Wings have had success, but the Lions have never had success. And
all right, that's Dan Campbell talking about the Detroit Lions. He's saying that they are a sleeping
Going into
giant.
this season, I felt like this place was a sleeping giant. To be honest with you, I personally was more concerned about the Chicago Bears than I was anybody else in this division.
Okay, 2 things on this. All right, first, Dan Campbell says the Lions are a sleeping giant. Then Ben Johnson, all right, feeling a lot like, the mouthpiece, right, for what it is, for Dan Campbell, feeling like that, says the exact same thing. The exact same thing. He also, in that same presser, said, we want the ability to morph. This is Ben Johnson. Whether it's 50 runs in a game or 50 passes a game, it does not matter. In Dan Campbell's intro presser back in 2021, all right, here's what he said. 5 plays that can go by coverage. Do you want to give him 2? So there's just a number of things I'm looking for. Look, I don't want a coordinator who's going to throw the ball 60 times in a game, 50 times a game. That's not what I'm looking for. On the flip side of that, I'm not looking for somebody to run it 50 times a game. So I know there's this perceived notion. Basically, they're saying the exact same thing. We can do either. Or we don't need to. All right? You want to be able to morph. And so, what you're seeing in all this is that it's the exact same. So here's the things that I think we need to watch out for very, very closely. And the first one, and I've talked about it on this channel even in the last few days, the first one is what's going to happen with Dennis Allen. Now, if you don't know who Dennis Allen is, all right, it was the head coach for the New Orleans Saints. He was the defensive coordinator, and then when their coach left, all right, he ended up taking over as the head coach. And it hasn't been great, but at the same time, they've been cap-strapped. It's been difficult. It's been really, really difficult. He was a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and what's really nice about him is that if you get him as your defensive coordinator, there's a really, really good chance that he's not going to go get another head coaching job any time in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years because he's been there, done that. All right, he could, but I look at it more like a Dan Quinn situation where he's the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys for 3, 4 years before he gets another head coaching job. All right, so he can be here for a long time rather than getting a young, hot DC that immediately ends up being a head coach. Why am I talking about Dennis Allen? It was a foregone conclusion when Ben Johnson got the defensive coordinator job, or when Ben Johnson got the head coach job with the Chicago Bears, that Dennis Allen was going to come be his defensive coordinator. In fact, it talked about how he was 100% going to go there and how they had agreed to it beforehand. Now we're hearing, and you never know what to believe in this season, that the Detroit Lions are actually going to bring in Dennis Allen for an interview and that there's a possibility that Dennis Allen could be the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Now, if that doesn't tell you anything, if Dennis Allen ends up being the defensive coordinator for the Lions, all that tells you, this is like a 5-star, top 5 recruit coming out of high school, committed to Ohio State, and midnight, the night before signing day or on signing day, flips his commitment and goes to U of M. Like, that's what this is. And I'm telling you right now, it's already a good staff when you bring in guys like Casey Rogers. When you have the other defensive staff that's there, you got to watch to see, like, is this battle going to be won by Dan Campbell? Is it even a battle? Because if he goes to Chicago, all that means is one of two things. Either, yeah, Ben Johnson won the battle, or Dan Campbell just decided somebody else was better. The Detroit Lions are bringing in Larry Foote to be a possible defensive coordinator. They're going to interview their own people. Dan Campbell said he's taking his time with this stuff. I am very interested to see on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. This is the next thing that I think we should be looking for. How many of these coaches are going to leave Detroit to go with Aaron Glenn to the Jets or Ben Johnson and the Bears? Because right now we've lost one additional coach, and he went to the Patriots to become a defensive coordinator. A lot of times when coaches leave, they bring some of the staff with them because it's an opportunity for them to get a promotion. And that's what they do. But if the Lions keep the majority of their coaches, and Ben Johnson's not getting a ton, and Aaron Glenn's not getting a ton, what does that tell you? It tells you that the coaches are confident in Dan Campbell. It tells you that the coaches are confident in what he is doing. And if they go, it can tell you that they're confident in Ben Johnson. It could tell you that they're confident in Aaron Glenn, or it could tell you that they got the opportunity to have a promotion. So I am going to be watching very closely over the next days to weeks on where these coaches are going, what the interviews are, where they're rumored to be. Because if the vast majority of them stay in Detroit, it's because they realize the best path to success in the future is in Detroit. And it means that it has a culture where they love being. All right, hey, thank you so much for watching. Try a morning release. We'll see how it goes. All right, happy Friday, everyone. See you on the next one.